radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Welcome, Fade to Black. How you doing? It is Thursday, June 27, 2024. This is my Friday. That's right. It's my Friday. So I get to kick back tonight, relax, and just do a nice, calm, cool, and collected show. But I can't. It's Ron James. It's Ron James. It's going to be great. And so the idea of just cruising through the night and getting to my Friday, and watching some documentary on UFOs tonight and relaxing with some dinner, and just cruise into the weekend. No, that's not going to happen. Ron James is here. We've had a nice week on Fade to Black. Monday, we had Russell Targan, remote viewing, an absolutely incredible show. Tuesday night, we had probably one of the best AMAs we have done in the many, many years on this show. Such a great AMA. And I want to thank everybody for hanging out and doing that, because that was just an incredible show. Last night, Emily Harrison, she's one of the best. She's one of my favorite people. And what a great conversation last night. She texted me last night after the show, and she goes, "Whoo, I need to take a walk." She really enjoyed herself. That was a good show last night. Tonight, Ron James is here. And Ron is in the middle of 4 cases that are being investigated, and we're going to go through those tonight. Ron is somebody that I've known for a very, very long time, and he's a filmmaker. He's a TV host. He's running media over at MUFON, amongst other things. Great filmmaker, great director. And I've done a few projects with Ron over the years, and a music video that's kind of simmering right now on the stove, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that tonight too as well. And that music video is not done. Ron wanted to show it tonight. No, it's not finished. It's not finished. When it's done, we'll pop that out to everybody. Coming up for the second half of 2024, I've got the 2024 Conscious Awards in Miami, Florida, and that is August 3rd and 4th. If you go over to Forbidden Knowledge, the links are below. You can get tickets and info, but you can also vote for each category for the awards, including the one that you nominated me for Best TV Host. So scroll down and vote for me, dang it. Yeah. I'm not going to win, but I got to put in some effort, right? So go click and vote for everybody. Vote in every category. Then I've got the Contact at Sea Cruise to Alaska, September 6th through the 13th. Links for that are below. Egypt is in October with Billy Carson. And I think that's sold out, but you can get on the waiting list if anybody cancels. The links are below. And then right after that, in November, Peru and Bolivia. And that is also sold out too as well. But there's a waiting list. You never know. Somebody may cancel. And if you want to go, the only way to make sure is get on that waiting list. So the links are below for all of that. Tonight, Ron James is with us. All right. Now, he is a filmmaker. He's a TV host. He's a writer. He's an editor. He's a researcher. He's been doing this for a very long time. He has interviewed everybody. And he's right. I mean, I got to say, he's got a pretty impressive list that he has put together over the years. And He's got his new film out. It's called Accidental Truth. And I think I've got a couple of seconds in that film. I'm very proud of that. And Ancient Aliens, and on and on and on with Ron James. I remember when I first met Ron, I don't want to say this with him on the air, but this was probably 10 years ago or so. And he comes up and introduces himself, and he goes, I want to show you a few things. And he takes me over and he shows me a collection of his TV shows. And I was like, oh my goodness gracious. Then I went and saw his TV studio. And that was a lot of fun, seeing that and how he puts things together. Ron has been curious about the subject for a very long time, and he has been trying to get to the bottom of everything, just like all of us. And tonight we're going to continue that tradition. So I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Ron James. Ron, good evening, young man.
Hi, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, my brother. Good to have you back. And I've titled this show, I think it's called 4 new UFO ET cases. I didn't know about, what do we do? Do we call them cases? Do we call them investigations? Do we do this? Is it ET? Is it UFO? You know what? Let the investigation play itself out. But it also allows me and you just to talk about anything, because it's just a big umbrella, right? So let's start with let's get the air out first. Let's just go there. What you found yourself in the middle of. The thing is, I started to get email, Ron, and a couple of comments and some text and private messages over the last couple of days when I announced this show. And I thought to myself, right? And this came up on Tuesday night too, as well. It was a question in the AMA. Jimmy, what do you think about Ron James and the MUFON investigation? Blah, 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 blah. And I said, wait till Thursday. And so let's go there first. And this is my take. Yes, I read your letter to John Greenwald. Okay, so I saw that. And I get it, but this is my take. I avoid that at all costs. And the reason why I avoid that at all costs is because every time I ever started to get involved into the story or whatever it is, the ending to the book was never good. And we've seen this happen over and over again over the years. And that's it. So for me, I just back off, man. I'm just a show host. I bring on guests and let them, lay out and present or talk about whatever we're going to do. But the internet and this community is chock full of very, 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 very smart people. It's that simple. Whether it's video or images or dates and names and things. Think about how the Wilson Davis document was picked apart. Oh, Ron, I lost you. Lost Ron. Just like that. Ron's out. So while I'm waiting for Ron to come back, he's okay, he's back. He's back.
Dude,
Ron, are you tripping over
the last little while?
Yeah. You're tripping over cables. You've got to watch your feet.
I didn't trip over anything. My internet has been cutting out in the middle of podcasts for about a week. Doesn't do it any other time.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. I don't freak out anymore. I don't, man. I don't. It's just whatever happens. I'm so used to it now. So back to this. The internet is full, and this community is full of very, very smart people. And you can pick just about any subject, whether it's MJ12 those documents or go to like the Wilson Davis document, I mean, how quickly were names and things and dates and stuff? Just there's a lot of very smart people out there. So you're going to throw an image out there. You better be ready for it, because
I'm very happy that people were able to figure this image out. We've got 70 images from this one case, and we're wading through them. I wasn't aware of this model kit that seems to resemble the characters in it. And when people, I put it out there, I never said, hey, I think this is a picture of a crash scene. I said, this is a picture that was submitted to us. And I'm very proud of the people on the internet that were able to get out there and identify the sources of this image. And I'm in total agreement that it's definitely 99% a case that this is a shot of a diorama made with the photos. It's called German Soldiers at Rest, that people went out and found and figured out. It speaks highly to the power of the people on the internet and the work that they did to get to the bottom of it. And I'm great with that. I even said when I the image.
Lost you again. Lost the internet. No. Okay, Ron, we've got some issues with your internet. We've got some issues. Okay, so I'll wait for Ron to come back. I can I can hear it. I can hear like the Wi-Fi cycling through, and just before it okay. Ron, are you back?
Yeah, I just literally had to switch from my very expensive business internet to my phone. So that's pretty bad. So where was I? I was talking about this image. What I didn't like is the nastiness of some of the people that wanted to accuse me of everything from attempting to perpetrate a hoax to coming forth and trying to screw up ufology. I mean, it's like the comments out there were brutal. And I'm like, look, I have another 60 images and I could use the same kind of help you guys gave me on this one. But do you think I'm going to put myself or the guy that gave me this stuff through that again? No.
Well, you know, okay. So probably should have approached it a little bit different, right? Which is post the image and go, I've got this image. What do you guys think? We need some help on this. Approaching it from that way instead of saying,
well, you know, it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. Patrick invited me on his show. He wanted to know more. I wanted to give him a little something that from our stuff. I didn't plan on posting this or showing it or sharing it. I just did it in the moment. And, you know, like I said, I'm glad we got to the bottom of what the image is. There's a lot more to this case, and some of it is compelling. And now everybody knows what the case is and who the guy is and everything else. So, you know, it's great. Let's continue to explore this case and see where it leads us. I can tell you some very interesting facts that we uncovered about this story. But, you know, also this photo was part of a tranche of photographs that this guy was given that came to him over a period of time. And some of them are very compelling and some of them are like, we're not sure. We entertained the possibility that this photo was a diorama when we first got it. And the only thing that kept me from coming to that conclusion was I didn't actually have any success in identifying where the little figurines came from. So there was never a time when I'm like, yeah, this is this. And that's how it is.
Yeah, that would have been the last photograph I would have whipped out on somebody's show. It would have been that. But that's just me, you know.
I think it's the coolest one, and you know it certainly lit a fire, and it's, you know, this guy now he didn't really want to go forward with coming out and going public. He wanted to wait until he self-published his book, but he's got like 5 copies in a cardboard box. He didn't want to do any of that stuff, but now everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows what the book is, and you know. That's divine timing. So the internet and the people on the internet, they did a great job figuring out this image. And yeah, we have more. And now if they want to know more about his story, they can check out his book. And I don't have to be in the middle of it.
Well, now you know which photographs to pick out of the tranche, the ones that look like Billy Meyer's diorama. you can do that now. So,
well, I flashed another one on John Greenwald's show yesterday, and the debunking effort on that one is not going as well. But at the end of the day, if they're fake photos, who wants to be involved in trying to perpetrate that they're not? Happy with the way we got to the bottom of it. In fact, I invite all the people that helped find the sources of that image to be involved in the rest of this investigation. And a couple of people reached out to me by email, and I'm really happy to add them to the team, because right now I am knee deep in weird cases.
So, okay. So, since this person is now public, who is he?
Well, he's public now. His name's Wayne Sturgill, and he's written a book called Ominous. And the way I met him was I was speaking at the McMinnville UFO conference, and he had a little booth where he was selling his book, and he had some copies of these photos. And so I went over and talked to him, and I started asking him questions about the origin of the pictures. And he told me the story that his father was part of a secret squadron that flew F-94 jets in the 1950s, and they were part of a squadron whose job it was to escort UAP away from populated areas. And I'm like, okay, well, you got my attention with that one. So I interviewed him while I was there, and my impression of Wayne is that he says that his family's been burdened with this story for a very long time. And let me just make one thing perfectly clear before I go even a step further. This is what was presented to me. This is part of an ongoing investigation. I am not touting results of this. I am not saying this stuff is 100% true. At this point in time, there's still elements of the story that we've been able to corroborate. There's some weird coincidences that tell us that there might be something to it. But at the end of the day, I'm not attached to an outcome. We all want the truth. I'm investigating this case. I'm going to present the results of my investigation, both in my next film, unless it turns out to be totally bogus, which I don't think that it will, but we'll see. And I'm going to share whatever we discover with the public, and whatever the public helps us to discover. So if I flashed another image and somebody came back and said, oh, no, that's from a model kit of whatever, I'd be very happy for that information. I'm pretty happy that we got to the bottom of that one. So anyway, back to the story. So supposedly in 1955, the squadron was flying a mission, and they intercepted a UFO, and the UFO shot down one of the jets with some kind of energy wave, he said. And this was the story he told me was conveyed to him by a pilot who flew with his dad, who only came forward after his dad passed away at an early age. So the story was that they had standing orders to engage any craft that posed a threat. And supposedly they shot down one of the saucers in 1955 in F-94 jets with a rocket. And that's what he told me. So as we started to investigate it, and there's a tranche of images, some of them are pretty weird. Some of them are unrelated to the F-94 story. And there's people that are asking me, well, why didn't you just trot out everything that's in this guy's book? His book is a family history of experiencers going all the way back to stuff his mom dealt with in 1947. My focus in the investigation that we've been working on is the story about dad and this squadron of jets and this shoot down. Is that true? So I don't even want to focus on the rest of the material that's in his book as far as what we're investigating and what we're trying to get to the bottom of. So that's the story he told me. He gave me a lot of images, typewritten letters that supposedly came from the pilot that flew with his dad, talking about secret programs at Wright-Patterson and a bunch of other stuff. He gave me some photographs of a box that was supposedly mailed to his family. And the contents of the box in these photographs, and they're terrible photographs, and it's like, okay. But there's a picture of the box with the contents outside of it. And in this box is some flight glasses that a pilot would wear, a binocular case that was, consistent with the period, and then a bunch of pieces of supposed debris that are purported to be from this crash. And so there's pictures of that, and there's a whole bunch of other things that are part of this package. The material debris they said was stolen. And there's actually a police report from the 2000s, early 2000s, that they filed reporting this box of debris stolen. But that's the only evidence we have about this debris. Some pictures of it, a weird box, and a police report talking about it being stolen. It would be fantastic if we had it and we could analyze it. But that's just another one of the parts of the story that brings up more questions than answers. So there's some things about this story that I find interesting. When we did the research about the F-94 jets, and all you guys out there can do this, you search the F-94s on Wikipedia, and one of the two weird things that we found. One is that indeed the F-94 jet at the time was like the state-of-the-art military jet. And
Sure.
It had some features that no other jets had, including the ability to shoot black or white and color gun camera footage. But also, it was one of the very few jets that was ever outfitted with rockets. Now, the difference between a rocket and a guided missile is that the military early on experimented with rockets. They were unguided rockets that they put on planes to see if they could shoot down other planes. And it only lasted for a couple models of jets. And the F-94 happened to be one of them, which I thought was interesting, since you said that the saucer was supposedly shot down with rockets. Then we find out that in Oregon in 1955, there was a Civil Air Defense Wing that had F-94 jets that was disbanded in the middle of 1955. And we found that out on Wikipedia. So the idea that these obscure state-of-the-art military jets were in a Civil Air Defense Wing in Oregon in the year that he described this incident as happening, that all checked out. So that was encouraging. So there's
where
waiting on.
Where was the incident?
In Oregon, outside of Portland.
Crater Lake?
It wasn't Crater Lake, no.
Because there was an incident in 1955 in Crater Lake. And what was interesting about that was there were 8 planes, Air Force. I don't remember them mentioning F-94s, but anyway, flew over Crater Lake, went through a cloud bank, 7 came out. 1 plane disappeared and was never seen again.
There's a possibility that this is the same case. We've been looking at NICAP and MUFON and Project Blue Book reports. If that's the same one, then the Crater Lake reference, the place where the actual saucer crashed, and we supposedly have the location and a map of the crash site. But again, I don't know if that's real. We'll put it out at some point when we complete our phase of the investigation. We'll let the UFO community help us figure it out. I'm not trying to sell a bill of goods. I'm just telling you what was presented to me and where I'm at in checking it out.
Yeah,
so,
that would have been interesting if it would have been that particular case, because that plane vanished.
Well, in this story, there were 3 F-94s coming from the squadron, and there could have been other jets. I don't know. But one of the planes was shot down. And the stories that we've been able to dig up, they talk about the encounter with the saucer, but they don't talk about a plane being shot down. But shortly after that, the F-94 jet squadron in this Civil Air Defense Wing that was in this airport in Oregon was disbanded in the middle of June of 1955. So that was pretty exciting to find something in the historical record that corroborated these jets, these particular model of jets being there, and also these jets being equipped with rockets, being one of the only few. And he had said that the guy that came forward to talk to him told him that they shot the thing down with rockets. And I thought that was pretty weird, who uses rockets, but it checked out. So the story he tells is that his father died young. There was a time when his father had taken the kids on a camping trip, and they went out to this lake, and he just remembers this as a childhood memory. He says, my dad pointed up to the top of this ridge, and he says, that up there is where a flying saucer crashed. And he carried that with him through his childhood. It wasn't, anything major. But then his dad died at age 56. And shortly thereafter, he started getting boxes and envelopes. The whole family, his sister, his brother, and him, were getting these things mailed to him. And that's why I say this stuff came in tranches. There was a little here, a little there. and letters from this guy who called himself Chuck Black, who he said later identified himself as Charles Blake. So at any rate, he gets these things, he gets this debris, he gets these letters talking about the things that they did, how they flew these jets, and how they also interfered with disinformation for Project Blue Book and a bunch of other stuff. And I have these letters, copies of some of them. And again, I'm not saying they're real. I'm just saying that this is what he presented us, and we have this stuff and we're looking at it. So shortly after the stuff had come to him, the Chuck Blake guy, or Charles Black, or whatever his name was, reached out to him and agreed to have a face-to-face meeting. And he went and met him at a restaurant. The guy was on his last leg as far as didn't have long to live. And he wouldn't let him record, and he wouldn't let him take notes, but he told him the whole story. And that's where he got some of the anecdotal elements of it. So that's what it is. We found a little bit of corroboration. We have an image that is definitely not what he even believes it is, and that's very disturbing. We have other images that we don't know. And so, like I said, I put one out for John Greenwald's crowd yesterday. They haven't been able to come up with a definitive debunking of that one, but a lot of speculation. And so that's where it's at. I got this case. I found it very compelling. I made an agreement with him to let me investigate it and feature it in what, if I found it worthy at the end of the day, feature it in my film with these three other cases that we're presenting. And that's where we're at.
The collection of photographs that you mentioned, the 60, 70 photographs, were those all given to him from the same source?
Yes. The photographs actually came from a lot of different sources, and there's some weird stories, but these photographs came to him in different groups of mails. Like an envelope would get to his sister, an envelope would come to his brother. And again, this is the story he tells. I'm not saying that it's true.
No. Okay. Okay. But from the same source was sending
the guy who called himself Chuck Black, who he later said the guy's real name was Charles Blake. So our investigation into the military records of these people is slowly progressing, but we were able to find an Air Force airman named Charles Blake that is consistent with the time period. And we have a picture of Charles Blake, supposedly with the pilot that died, supposedly taken by this guy's father, and supposedly with this guy that was a photo analyst whose job it was to take these images and gun camera footage from these flights. And if they were something that would be classified, his job was to fly to Wright-Patterson with them and develop them. And part of the little side story of all of this is that this guy he'd go into Wright-Pat to do the work in the dark room with the other team. And at one point he had a bald spot on his head, and he grew a cowlick, and he taped a negative to his head and smuggled it out of Wright-Pat. And it's supposedly a picture of an alien. But of course, I'm not about to put that out right now. I'm still being lambasted for the last one. I don't know. If
it's tough, man. It's tough.
Well, people just need to wait, because we have 2 more weeks before we do our symposium presentation. This is one of 4 cases. We've got 4 pretty astounding cases that we're presenting. And that's another thing I got chewed out for by the web is, it's $99 for the live stream. It's not just this event. That's the whole MUFON symposium. And we charge that every year. And it's the least expensive live stream of the symposium of all the UFO symposiums. And so, getting lambasted for that's not cool. MUFON.
And nobody cares. Ron, don't lose sleep over that. Nobody cares. Okay,
so anyway, what I'm saying is there's a lot of evidence to this case. As we digest it, we're going to roll it out. And at some point we'll conclude our investigation.
Right. And what I mean by that, when I say nobody cares, obviously somebody is trying to get under your skin. But nobody cares about that kind of stuff. Man.
Look, I've gone through this field for close to 20 years now, putting out a lot of really credible material. I've probably produced more finished hours of published UFO content than anybody, counting all the conferences I've done and all the stuff I've finished and edited and put out, hundreds and hundreds of hours. I put out my own films. Accidental Truth won 28 awards and was called one of the best UFO docs of all time. I have never been in a situation where people were saying these kinds of things about me. And yeah, I guess it kind of irritated me because I take my integrity very seriously.
We all do. We all do. We all do. But that's exactly why I don't pay attention to what people say. I just don't do it. I don't care. It throws, you know what it does? It takes your time out of your beautiful day to think about something else when you should be flying over the target. And that's the problem. So just don't let it, screw it, man.
Right. Exactly. So look, there's a few people out there with negative things to say. And if I was in the room with you, you wouldn't say them to my face. Ha ha. But at the end of the day, I don't care about that because we're totally in the clear for everything we said. Everything I said is completely, not that what I was reported is completely true, but how it was conveyed to me and what I was told and what I shared, all completely true.
Okay. Well, we can move on. So, by the way, the F-94, in my opinion, one of the sexiest planes ever.
It was badass, man. It was one of the early jets. There's a picture of the F-94 that had these weird rocket, like in the fuselage, it had these doors that would open up like this, and it was full of rockets. And they would have to aim the plane and shoot it at the target.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when he told me rockets on a plane, I was like, there was only a couple of planes where they experimented with rockets, and then they gave up and they discovered guided missiles. But yeah, so that's one of the parts of the story that checked out that got me pretty excited.
So this Chuck Black, Charles Blake, whatever his name is, he is the one that sent the diorama picture, right?
And a whole bunch of other pictures.
Well, no, but he's the one that sent the diorama picture, right?
That's what Wayne said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. I mean, what do you do with the rest of it? You could have a real picture of an alien in bed with Roosevelt, right? And if the diorama picture is sent in the same envelope, then they're both bogus. It's
the same
weird
thing with all of this stuff. Every time something comes out, it seems like it's blended in with disinformation.
That's right.
Like the MJ12 papers, like Stanton Friedman would say, I believe half of them. It's possible it's something like that. But the other thing is, it was brought to my attention by John Greenwald. He sent me a picture of a diorama that was actually built by Project Blue Book people of the Lonnie Zamora incident and passed around as a way to illustrate the incident. And this is out there. I sent it to John. I could show you right now. And I thought, wow, maybe the military guys would build these dioramas and then use them to convey what happened without the having to show actual crashes. And I entertained that for about 5 minutes until I looked up the date that this model kit was created. German soldiers at rest by this Taiwan model company. It was first released in 1984. So that there's no way that back in the 50s, somebody made a diorama to look like this thing, because the kit didn't come out until 30 years later. So it's a clear fake. And yeah, it's very disappointing.
Yep. So now, okay. The last part of this, because I want to stay on this case just for a little bit longer. How long was his dad in the Air Force for?
Okay, so that's another part of the story that we're struggling with. The story he tells is that his dad was brought in first through the Navy, and then he became a member of the Air Force, and that his dad would literally change uniforms and wear and serve different services depending on his assignment, and that there were also times when his dad was assigned to have civilian jobs that were a cover for what he was doing. And so this guy was, we haven't been able to verify his military record. Not that we haven't not been able to verify it, but I've got, the guy working on that, and it's sketchy. He's got pictures of his dad in a Navy uniform. He's got a picture of his dad in an Air Force uniform. And the story that Chuck Black says is that we were under the cover of all having like civilian jobs, and that we would have to do all these different things.
But they were pilots.
They were pilots. Yeah.
Man, that's tough.
Now
you can change branches of service. Steve Murillo, who you know, went to the Naval Academy. Okay, but when he graduated for pilot and became a pilot, he graduates, he's in the Navy, but then he joins the Marines. He became a Marine fighter pilot. So he was in both branches of service. And it's not uncommon for that to happen, but you have to leave a branch and then enter another branch. I don't think you can be in two branches or three at the same time. Now, clandestinely, is there something like that could go on? I'm a military brat. I grew up in that world. I never heard of anything like that. But
the way it was conveyed to me is that he was knee deep in intelligence with the highest of clearings, and he was in whatever branch of the military they told him he was going to be in that week. So I don't know.
I mean, it's possible if you're going to be doing secret stuff. Yeah. Okay. All right.
But here's the thing. We have not been able to get our hands on this guy's military records. And I've asked Wayne, I told him, this is the big glaring hole in this thing. If you can't show us,
DD 214 is pretty simple.
You can go to the DOD and you can ask, and we can go through a FOIA thing that'll take 6 months, but he can go to the DOD and ask for his dad's records. So, that's all still pending. And frankly, if we don't get that evidence that his father was doing this service, we're going to drop the whole thing at that.
There you go. Okay. So now,
and I told him it's a deal breaker for me.
Okay. So that's one case. We're going to be talking about 4. What's the second case?
So the main case that we're featuring is that we got an email from a guy in Russia. He's a Russian businessman and claims to be an experiencer. And he said that these materials were appearing in his house and he was throwing them away. And then he started being nagged by this idea that there was something about these materials. He felt like he was being communicated with. And believe me, if the F-94 story sounds weird, this is about to get weirder. So he finally took some of the material to a Russian gemological laboratory and they analyzed it. And what they came back with was 90% of the material, they couldn't tell what it was. And 10% of it was metal, and it was identifiable elements, but it was no known alloy. And so he sent some of that stuff to us under the idea that this was material that they couldn't identify. And we ran it through our labs, and they couldn't identify it either. And so that's where we're at with that. The guy says that he's being told by these beings that communicate with him that this material is important, and that it's going to have some meaning once the final analysis is done. And so that's where we're at with that. We genuinely have a sample that is defying analysis at the moment, completely true. We've run it through 2 labs. And then when we went to send it to the 3rd lab, another weird story, it was mailed, and people are like, why did you guys use the mail? And if they are going to get their hands on something that you possess, they're going to take it, whether you send it UPS, FedEx, or courier. So at any rate, it disappeared out of a mailbox after having been delivered to our international investigator. And we went and interviewed the people at the post office, and they are on camera saying, yeah, we work for the United States Postal Service. Once something goes in a box, it's a federal offense to mess with it. I remember this box. It was a white box. I put it in Bob's post office box, and it disappeared. And when he went to get to the bottom of what happened at the post office, all the cameras in the post office lobby had been turned toward the wall. So somebody was tracking us in our communications about this material, and somebody got it, who had the nerve to steal something from a United States box. So that's all interesting. And now we have new samples that we're not sharing the route, but suffice it to say that they still haven't reached us, and we're struggling to get to them.
From the same source in Russia.
Same source. He sent us another set.
Okay, so and what does the material look like? And how big is it? Is it little stuff? Is it big stuff?
It's little stuff. It's kind of like that, what you see in Gary Nolan's videos, these little tiny pieces. We got a bunch of pictures of it. I sent you a graphic that has one of the shots of it. It's just a little black piece of something. And it resembles like there's the metal element to it that the Russian lab identified, and the other stuff kind of resembles almost like a rubbery substance, but we haven't been able to identify it as any kind of insulation or rubber material or anything like that. That's just kind of what it resembles. So again, it's a big mystery. We're still investigating it. So far, everything we said about it is true, and if it turns out to be something that we can explain, we'll be explaining it as soon as we know. But so far, we can't.
Well, I was just checking for your email, and guess what I got?
Uh-oh.
I got James Goodall's new book. He just sent it to me. Man, that's pretty. It's not as good as a Ron James, but man, that rate's up there. Okay, yeah, hit me with it, Ron. Let me see it. The witness, the source in Russia, was saying that ET was showing up in his home and leaving this material behind for him.
He wasn't saying that ET was showing up. He's one of those people who has these experiencer stories, and through whatever method of communication he has with these beings. And I think we should probably sidetrack here for a minute and talk about that. We are noticing at MUFON, and this is a trend that we can describe and we're pretty sure about, that I think experiencers are about to have their day. And I think that disclosure at this point in time may very well come through experiencers coming forward with uncanny, irrevocable evidence. And it's kind of like the government's being bypassed. And as we pointed out in Accidental Truth, there's new scientific evidence that there's parts of the brain that are capable of levels of communication that we don't even know exist, and that we have evidence that it's happening. And so this is one of two cases that we're going to be presenting at the symposium, where experiencers, who are people that feel as though they're communicating with non-human intelligence, and this can be anything from I've had an encounter with an alien, I was taken aboard UFOs, to I've always heard and listened to the voices of my guides. I think that over time, we're going to find out that all of this stuff is operating through a lot of the same mechanisms. So these people in this subset are now being given things. And we're seeing a trend. I call it things that just appear. We have another case with a lady that just had some stuff appear in her kitchen, and it wouldn't leave her alone until she went and had it analyzed. And it's been through the National Institute of Health. It's been through the National Security Agency. It's been through multiple laboratories. And the results are just kind of extremely strange. So before people poo-poo this whole thing, and again, I'm not saying it is fact, but I think there is a trend in experiencers actually having these communications, and things are starting to appear in their worlds that they're being told and guided to bring forth. And I know that sounds crazy, but there is some evidence that things like this are happening, because we've gotten multiple reports from multiple people with multiple different things that are telling us basically the same story.
Why do you think, and I know you've thought about this a lot, I know that I have, that all of the materials, all of the evidence of the materials that have been brought forward have never had shape, right? And I've got tiny stuff in here. I've got tiny stuff that I can pick up, tiny things, but they have shape. Everything, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, okay, so look, here is the foot of a piece of gear. Just a tiny little thing, right? But dude, it's got shape. Why, as tiny as this, why is it that why don't we have a piece of a chair or a piece of this or something that's got shape to it? That's I try to grapple. It's like it's always one step away from something that could be identifiable.
I think there's an answer to that, but the thing is, it's multifaceted. and complex. For one thing, I did a thought experiment with somebody the other day on a show where we talked about crash retrievals. And the thought experiment is this. Certainly our government has very well-trained, very rapid response crash retrieval teams whose job it is to go anywhere in the world within a very, very short period of time and recover anything that has crashed. Now, let's leave UFOs out of it for a minute and just say a Russian jet, a secret satellite. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be ET. It's totally sensible and even acknowledged that we do have these teams. And so it stands to reason that if we do have these teams and the supposed flying saucer crashes, well, they're going to go get that too. And so the idea of people struggling with crash retrievals and crash retrieval teams, certainly we have them. And even if we're not talking about ET. And these teams over the years and the people that guide them have become very, very, very good. And they've constantly got their ear to the grindstone. And so far, they've been remarkably adept at getting this material and getting it out of circulation and away from prying eyes. And so that's one part of it. I found out something that we're putting in the film that is very, very compelling about Linda Moulton Howe's material. So I'll share that with you now because it points to what's going on. Remember Linda Moulton Howe's triangle that came with the arts parts? And it was this bismuth, magnesium, zinc triangle, and it had these micro thin layers. And it's still out there debated about it. I was researching this, and it turns out that back in the 1990s, when this material first came out, it was analyzed by a young scientist named Hal Puthoff. Now, Hal sent Linda the results of his testing. And in this mail that he sent her, and I have the correspondence, he told her, he said, we tested this material, and I'm summarizing, we tested this material. There was nothing unusual about its composition. And then he said something that was really strange. He said, however, one of the tests we were unable to subject this material to was frequency ranges of 2.5 terahertz or whatever. I don't remember the numbers, but out of all the possible tests you could put on a piece of metal, he specifically called out that they hadn't done this particular test, which was subjecting it to frequencies, a test which nobody would ever even think to do to metal. So why is Hal saying this in this letter? Well, then it gets a little stranger. There is a video that has surfaced of this very same piece of material being subjected to these energy frequencies, and it is vibrating around on top of a drum. But when you zap it with the energy, it vibrates. Remember, the rumor about this material is that it was some kind of anti-gravitic skin off a spaceship. Now, on this video that surfaced from the same time period, guess who's talking? Travis Taylor.
Okay.
Now this is back when he first started with the intelligence communities and was doing all his stuff. And he is in there making comments about how the material is reacting to this stuff. And she presented this at the 2008 MUFON Symposium. And so anyway, so set that aside. Now we go through years of debunking the material, years of nobody really having an explanation for how come these layers of metal could be so fine. And then what do we get? We get TTSA. What is the first thing TTSA does? They sign a contract with the Army to.
Well, no, even worse than that. No. That's not the first thing they did. The first thing they did was sold stock and then took that money and bought the material from Linda Moulton Howe.
Right.
And
who was a major player in TTSA? Hal Puthoff. Now, to me, this says that these guys knew that there was something to this material. They knew it all along. And when they got the chance to get it and take it out of the public view, they did it. And now where are those materials? They're gone. They paid Linda Moulton Howe $35,000 for them, gave them to the Army. Everything's sketchy after that. So this is an example of somebody knowing about this set of materials that was out in the wild for all this time. And as soon as they had the means and the capabilities, they made sure it got out of the public vernacular. This is how organized and how profound these guys operate. And so the fact that Putoff and his crew went after this material and took it. And there was one more element to this, and that is, back in the day, nobody could explain how we got these ultra thin layers of material. Well, enter Dr. Gary Nolan when I'm interviewing him, and he's talking to me about this technology having evolved, atomic level 3D printing. Now, we didn't have 3D printing back in the 90s. It wasn't even on our radar screen when they were trying to figure this out. But now we have 3D printing, and we have a pretty good idea that some of these craft are made using super fine 3D printing that we don't have the capability of doing. But it explains the layers in this metal like nothing else could back at the time. So Linda Moulton Howe's triangular piece of metal is turning out to be the gift that keeps on giving. And the story about how it was poo-pooed back in the day, how it was discredited, how it sat in her safe, but then all of a sudden, as soon as there was means to go and get that and get it ported into a military, the people that studied it all those years ago spearheaded that effort. And now it's gone, and we can't trust anything we're being told about the results.
Yeah, she sold it too cheap. Yeah,
well, there's that too. But
yeah.
Hey, look, when you're a ufologist, and Linda's a good friend of mine. I don't fault her in any way, but hey, 35 grand is a lot of money.
Yeah. I could see that. But the interesting point about that, though, which I tend to agree with, again, it didn't have a shape, but the idea of quantum level molecular assembly of elements and materials was never thought about, and even though today, when we talk about nanomaterials and latticing of carbon and these ideas of assembling stuff one at a time, and building up layers. Well, yeah, we can do that. And we're getting really, really good at it. But 30 years ago, no.
But not to the average person. So the big question about how did they get this little micro thin layer of metal in this sample, that was a big question then. It's not a big question now. Only we don't have the ability to revisit this sample because it's been taken by the very same people that were studying it years ago. I think it tells a very compelling circumstantial story, and it speaks.
Well, wasn't part of the agreement with the Army was that they would share the results of the testing, and then they ended up giving the material back, saying there's nothing here. Wasn't that their test results?
That's their published test results. And I mean, let's face it, we have this material that on the surface is very easily debunkable. It's common elements. We know what they are. There's a couple of explanations out there for how that material could have been generated as industrial slag and some byproducts. Even, so there is that. But, let's face it, why, if this was all resolved back in the 1990s when Hal and Travis first looked at this stuff, then why the grab to get it back when they had the means to do it? And honestly, you send something to the Army labs, you believe what they say? Does anybody out there believe what a government lab is going to tell us?
Yeah, I mean, well, see, but that was a big mistake publicly by TTSA when originally, and I don't want to rag on TTSA because it's too easy to do. It's just low-hanging fruit. But here's the deal. The original pitch from DeLong and everybody was we would have anti-gravity public transportation, right? That's one of our goals. Right? This is for humanity. We're doing this for the world. We're doing this, and the first thing out of the gate, right? The stock gets sold and everything else. The first thing you do out of the gate is you sign a CRADA deal with the U.S. Army to use their laboratories. What? It was just like that. Publicly, that's not a good look.
Look, the whole
you're either with the man or you're not, right? And so if you're with the community and you're with us and you're for the people, then you keep that kind of stuff with the people. We have our own ways of getting stuff done. To turn around and sign a CRADA deal when you look at who was the employees at TTSA, it seemed like it was just a government front anyway from the beginning. And then you do that. What does that show everybody? That's why the distrust went out of TTSA so fast.
Look, the whole thing, Lou Elizondo's rollout, Christopher Mellon, the videos being dropped, and the formation of TTSA, that was all part of a planned operation. And nobody will ever convince me differently. And privately, that has been acknowledged to me. When Lou dropped his resignation letter and did this, there was a lot of time between the time he did it and wrote and the plans were in place. And then TTSA was right there, ready, waiting in the wings. Why? Because it had already been formatted. Lou knew that when he dropped this resignation letter and gave up a certain amount of pensions, that TTSA was going to raise millions of dollars and he was going to be financially okay. All of this was orchestrated. And so here's what went wrong. When TTSA came out and went public with this story, and they had all these, our new best friends from the intelligence community behind it, and trying to convince us that these people were on our side for disclosure. And I think to a degree they are, this crowd, but they didn't raise nearly as much money as they thought they were going to raise. And so all of these people who had banked on having a solid, even really good financial future from TTSA moving forward, it wasn't enough cash. They were hoping to raise 22 million, I believe, and it was 10% of that.
Yeah.
Numbers are sporadic, but it didn't work. And then shortly afterwards, became the media grab, and that's where all of a sudden DeLong is trying to create this media entertainment company, and he's trying to patent, copyright, and trademark every aspect of ufology. And that was very bad optics that some of the founding members of TTSA didn't want to be a part of. That it's like, and so that created these inner fractures that eventually splintered the organization, and it's still going along. But that is my take on what happened, and I've had this take, quiet nods that I'm right. And recent conversations with Lou, and he's not going to mind that I mention this. All of these people are still working. This whole thing is not what it's being laid out to be. They're still doing the op of limited disclosure, and they're all still playing their roles, and they're all still doing their jobs. And so it is what it is.
Except Tom is now on tour with Blink 182. Let's take our break right here, Ron. Stay right there. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I want to invite you to come to Alaska with me on the Contact at Sea cruise. It is this September 6th through the 13th, 2024. We are on the largest ship in the Pacific Ocean. That's right, the Ovation of the Seas. It's an amazing cruise, and a ship this big is so much fun. We've got lots of activities and lots of great speakers. We are leaving from Seattle to Sitka, Alaska, Skagway, Juneau. We're going to end the cruise in Victoria, BC, and arrive in Seattle on September 13th. We've got a lot of amazing speakers, including we've got Seth Shostak, Scott Walter, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Sheehan, Daryl Sims, Mas Adi, Vivian Chavez, Grant Cameron, Geraldine Orozco, Misha Johnston, and Melanie Aguirre, and a whole lot more. All you have to do is go to divinetravels.com. You can also go to contact@sea.com. Both are going to take you to a full event schedule. You can check in, look at the boat, get things ready to go, and maybe get a cabin with a balcony. That's what I'm talking about. Come see the whales. Come check it all out. Let's go to Alaska this September 6th through the 13th, 2024 with me, Jimmy Church. Now, when you head to divinetravels.com or contact@sea.com and get signed up, you know what? Use my name, Jimmy Church. I'll see you there September 6th through the 13th, 2024. Let's go to Alaska. This is Jimmy Church. Please visit and explore Egypt this October 3rd through the 14th, 2024 with Billy, Elizabeth, myself, and very special guest and the #1 podcaster in the world, Sean Kelly. It's simple to do. Just go to forbiddenknowledge.com and click on upcoming tours or click on the link below. We'll see you there. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's fade to black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter @JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Ron James is with us. We are covering four UFO and ET investigations that are ongoing. We've discussed 2, and we're going to move on to number 3. Ron, okay, so case number 3, what are you working on?
Okay, so believe it or not, it's Roswell, the gift that keeps on giving. I'm working with Toby from the Roswell Daily Record and Warren from KRGA. We're producing a new mini series because, believe it or not, there's new evidence. These guys have been out scouring the crash site. They've found some more materials. We have new witnesses, and it's worth bringing up. So we're going to be showcasing that also as one of the new cases. And the it's either going to be a doc or a mini series. We haven't figured out how much material we have. That'll dictate what it is. But yeah, he's been working really hard out there for a lot of years, and he's come up with some stuff that it's metal samples, again, that are aluminum and unknown alloys. And we're running into this more and more. You say you have a metal sample, and just 101 for people that don't know this. The periodic table, we know what that is. Very rarely are there new elements that come onto it, like 115 did, oddly enough. But so we could get a sample that's from anywhere, and we can say, well, that's aluminum, magnesium, barium, whatever. But the combination of the elements, there's a worldwide register of alloys, which says these are the mixtures of metals that have been made by humanity to create certain alloys that are used for certain purposes. And there's a catalog of those. So when you get a metal sample, you can do two things. You can identify what the elements are, and you can also identify what the alloy is by the percentages of elements and how they're combined. Now, these latest samples, one set of the samples it does have aluminum in it, but again, it's no known alloy or combination. And one of the scientists that investigated it says that there's elements of the sample that seem to show that it had been through a high stress, high heat event before it was recovered. So we're going to be showing that. And
where did they come from? A crash site? There's three crash sites.
Yeah, from a couple of the crash sites out in Roswell. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't have gotten everything. And so there's, Toby's been at the Red Rock News. He's their Roswell guy, and he's been going out there off and on for years and years and years and years, including, sites that he's been told about that aren't really well known. And there's a whole other site that has been rumored to exist that they think they found. So we're going to be sharing all of that. And again, I'm just sharing the information I've been given in the manner it's given to me, and wherever we're at the stage of our investigation is that snapshot in time is what we'll be sharing.
And can you describe what this metal debris looks like?
It's just like all the other metal debris. It's little fragments of stuff that doesn't look like anything. And you were asking me earlier, what do you think the reason for that is? I think the reason for that is that anything bigger than my thumb, these guys that are in charge of making sure this stuff never sees the light of day are pretty good at getting their hands on it. In fact, I'm thinking it would be really funny to fake a UFO crash and see what the cat drags in. But if we should put together a team and do it. But anyway, what I'm saying is that around a piece of debris, there is going to be chatter. If I went out in my yard and I found something that I couldn't identify and it looked like it was going to be something, there would be somebody, especially us in the field that are followed all the time anyway, there would be somebody whose job it was to get their hands on that, especially, and no matter how much of a secret you tried to keep it, it's going to be tough. And now it's intensifying because the holy grail of everything is that definitive piece of material. It's game over once we finally come up with that, or that piece of technology like you were talking about. And so there's some very experienced people, in my opinion, that are very adept at making sure that stuff stays off the market.
Yeah. Just like when Jacques Vallée in that book Trinity, right? So he's got this, and that had shape to it, right? Had shape. Oh, okay. Now we got something. A little bit of history behind it. There's some foundation behind it, and so forth. And the book was a good book. He wrote that with Paola. So anyway, how long did it take to get that debunked? Like seconds, right? Seconds. And it was amazing to me to find parts from a parts catalog for windmills.
Right.
It's like, how do you even know to go there? Right. But that's what the internet is. And you can go back to, I want to stay on this case. I want to stay with this Roswell thing. But if you go back, when Jaime Maussan, I'm not ragging on Jaime, but when you go and you whip out a photograph and you say it is this, and you turn around and you fill an arena and you do this big rollout. I had been provided the high-res scans in advance, right? I was invited to go down there.
You stayed away,
no.
huh? Yeah,
I did. I was invited, and they wanted me to come. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I'm looking at the high-res images that were sent. These scans were ginormous, man. The file size, they were huge scans. And when I say this big, that's how big they were. I mean, you had to but they were really, really nice. And I'm looking at them and I was like, this is not going to end well. So the presentation,
the famous mummy gate.
Yeah. So the presentation happens, Ron, and it took, I'm going to say, I was in real time, right? Watching it, this and that. I'm going to say, and I might be exaggerating, it took about 30 minutes. It might have not even taken that long to get the card. Remember the card, the display card? Well, okay. And so but then immediately it was the truck stop museum and where it was and the name of it. And just 30 minutes, that whole thing just unraveled, And so just like any of this stuff, I think that's one of the reasons why we get bits and broken pieces. We don't get anything like this, right? Because somebody's going to get to the bottom of that really quickly, unless it was not of this earth. But if it was of this earth, like that diorama picture of yours,
it's not mine.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying, right? There's too many smart people out there, and I don't know how they do it and how they pull it off. These people aren't even related; they don't know each other. I've
said it before, and I'll say it again. My hat's off to the people that figured this out. As far as I'm concerned, you guys helped me. You enabled the part of this investigation to be solved, and I've got absolutely no animosity toward the people who went out and figured this out, because thank goodness you did. It stopped that dead in its tracks, and I appreciate it. And I said that when I was showing the image. But the other thing, Jimmy, is that you say, well, if it was an intact piece of something, it would be debunked. And that's why we only get little pieces. I mean, that infers that there's a reason to have these little shapeless pieces, because we're hiding the fact that they're not anything special. I think that I'm not sure because that would imply a deceptive nature to the whole thing. Well, I only have this little thing. It doesn't look like anything. But if I had the rest of it, it would look like something, and you guys could go online and find it in a parts catalog.
True. I get that. Yeah, I totally get that. And now staying on
that windmill part, that in that supposed debunking, if you look at the drawing, it's not the exact same part.
It's not, but it was enough for me. Yeah, it was enough for me. It was enough. Even for Jacques, I remember Jacques and I, we were sitting talking and by ourselves, and he goes, "I don't want to talk about it. It's not alien." And that was it. He checked out.
People were saying, well, those figures in the photo, even though they resemble what's in that model, they don't appear to be exact. And I looked at it, and especially when this third person was brought in, there were three people in the picture, and somebody found another version of the picture where that third person was more clear. The one that I have, he was very obscure. You couldn't make him out. I didn't even realize there was a third person in it. But that third person had this very distinctive pose where he's sticking his arm out like this. And it was almost an identical match to this model kit. So for me, that was the definitive thing, is you have 3 figures, and it was a model kit. We looked it up, and you assembled this with bits and pieces. So if you wanted to change the position of somebody's arm or put a different hat on them, you were able to do that within the kit. And once I realized that, I'm like, all right, there you go. I'm not going to defend this image. It's clearly what the people are saying it is. And
yeah. Okay, so back to Roswell. That what I've always found, there's a few cases that we have like Roswell that it's not case closed. And Roswell is one of those cases that has not been at all even close to being solved, to being a hoax or being made up or being this or just
on giving. Just when you think Roswell's been done to death, something else pops up. And we brought in
for sure.
The Roswell Showtime movie. Paul Davids is working with us on this project, and he's really gratified to be back to Roswell, so to speak.
Yeah. Roswell's a great case. And I'll tell you another, for me, and it's not brought up enough, is Rendlesham. And it's really weird how we have a case like Rendlesham, and then we'll move on to your 4th case. But Rendlesham, to me, even though it's almost 45 years ago now, that's kind of nuts to suggest. It's modern. The witnesses are here. It's a military case. You've got a pile of documentation on this, and everything is right there. And you would think that more attention would be paid to that case. And it's very strange to me. It's just bizarre.
Nick Pope and Charles Halt wrote a book about that, and I interviewed them in California. And we had the set all set up, and so I'm grilling them about this stuff. And you remember in Accidental Truth when Robert Bigelow starts to answer the question, his eyes are just going all over the place, and you can tell he's got himself in a jam. Well, this whole interview with Halt and Pope was filled with that kind of stuff. It's so bad I never published it. It's like, Nick's like, well, I have had media training, and Halt's like, I'm like, well, Charles, why did you not just come forward with the stuff you're coming forward with now? Oh, well, so, these guys, that's another one of those cases. And I don't know if you know this or not, but when John Burroughs testified at the citizen hearing on disclosure, which I produced with Steve Bassett and Reuben Langdon, we were able to get his medical records. They didn't clear his medical records, but because of the citizen hearing on disclosure, they went ahead and gave him his VA benefits. So he walked out of the citizen hearing on disclosure. He had some of the ex-Congress people making phone calls for him, and it unlocked his ability to get the care that he deserves after what he went through. So I'm very intimately involved and knowledgeable about Rendlesham. Crazy case.
Case.
We're part of it.
It should be out there in front, and I don't understand why. People ask me all the time. I get that question, Ron, I get it every day. Okay, so what's your favorite case? Well, Rendlesham, and I normally get a response like, why? What do you mean, why? The whole thing is right in front of us. It's a modern case. This isn't where all of the witnesses died 50 years ago, right? That's not what
Rendlesham, as it's presented, it is what it is. What else are we going to find out? Nobody's going to find a piece of metal. Nobody's going to find another witnesses. The witnesses have all come forward pretty much and told us what they found. The only people that aren't coming clean are the people that came to debrief them and doped up John and did all the things that happened. But Rendlesham, we already know, I believe, what there is to know. We can surmise the rest. There was nuclear weapons at the base. There was, all kinds of things of that nature going on. And then we have the other aspect of it where this binary code was supposedly transferred. I don't know about you. I could never remember that much binary code ever. And then it pointed to a little island in the middle of nowhere that was inconclusive. So there's a few things about that story that aren't very productive. So, at the end of the day, I think maybe Rendlesham is where it is because we pretty much hit a dead end as far as what we're going to be able to document without going into people, giving up classified information or declassifying documents and videos and reports. So
yeah, but my point is, and you're right about that. But my point is, especially with somebody like Sean Kirkpatrick that says, there's nothing here, there's no military stuff for us to look at, and arrows about this. And dude, have you heard about Rendlesham? You got the United States Air Force, you got the RAF, you've got two separate bases run by two different countries. You've got the local police, you've got radar data, you've got a stack of paperwork, you've got medical injuries, you've got all of the eyewitness testimony. It's all right there. Don't tell me you don't have a solid military example. And that's putting the Nimitz to the side. That's
right.
Putting the Roosevelt to the side. You've got Rendlesham. It's your gift. Go and look into that. Don't tell me you don't have anything historical to look at.
Look,
it's all right there.
If you want, we can go down the Kirkpatrick rabbit hole all day. Part of Accidental Truth Next, and I'll do a shameless plug. Here's our poster. This is coming out in fall. It's the next iteration of the Accidental Truth documentary series, and one of the things that I'm exploring in depth with Danny Sheehan and with Congressman Tim Burchett, new interviews with a lot of people, is the Kirkpatrick mess. Because Arrow how they finally put out that report is laughable at best. And the question is, was Kirkpatrick playing along? Did he do this on purpose? Was he part of an agreed upon disinformation thing? Or was he just duped? And we're coming to the sad realization that he just agreed to play along with this whole thing. And I have this on extremely good account. There's people that tried to go to him and tell him stuff. Danny Sheehan walked in there and told him exactly where he could find those Project Blue Book files, the classified ones that showed this crash that Danny saw. And they didn't follow it up. Kirkpatrick says David Grush was very difficult to get in the office. David said he tried very hard to get in there, and that there were times when Arrow was even thinking that maybe they should have him arrested. Lou was in there. Chris Mellon was in there. They told these guys under classified stuff where the bodies were buried. They just chose not to look at them. It was a total Pentagon op to stonewall us, and that's at play right now. The battle that we're seeing unfold in the mainstream with the Kirkpatricks versus the Grushes is a illustrative of a giant battle that's going on behind the scenes, and the stakes are getting higher. That's why people like Lou and David are saying, hey, I'm feeling very threatened, and for good reason. Lou's book's coming out in August 24th. It's gonna open some doors, and there's a lot of things that he wanted to say in the book that he couldn't say, but he's still getting harassed about it.
And we'll see. Well,
David Grush, because
we'll
Grush
talk about that. I didn't mean to cut you off, Ron. We'll talk about that when the book comes out, and we'll see. But to circle back, the other part about this, when we look at Roswell, because that's the case that we're talking about, and everything that was immediately after that, just military, forget about civilian, forget about, whatever, backwoods, whatever. No, military only, which Sean Kirkpatrick would have access to those records. But historically, he doesn't have the research or knowledge of any of that. He's never cracked a book. He's never read Dolan's Security State. He doesn't know who Donald Kehoe is. Doesn't have a clue about historically of all of the things that have happened with the military over the years, and there's a reason for that, and I get it. You and I have been at this our lives. We've made this our life's mission. Okay, what is in your head, Ron, would take somebody like Sean Kirkpatrick, or what's in my head, or what's in Dolan's head, or Linda Moulton's head. It would take somebody 30, 40 years to learn all of that, because that's how long it took you. And Kirkpatrick hasn't done any of that research. He's basing everything on Twitter. He's basing everything on what happened this week. He's basing everything on what Grush said. He knows nothing about the historical record. And that's the problem. Why would you put somebody...
people going through Arrow? And, you know, there's a video that's going to come out of me pretty soon, sitting in Congressman Burchett's office, outlining the whole story from Roswell forward to a sitting congressman. It's the only video I think ever taken of a UFO investigator laying it out in chronological detail for a sitting member of Congress. And I can tell you, I laid it out for Andre Carson. I laid it out for Warren Davidson. I laid it out for Ed Markey, face-to-face meetings with sitting congresspeople. And I know on extremely good authority that these guys, Sean Kirkpatrick had a lot of people passing in and out of there that told him exactly where to look, and he just didn't do it. And so the fact that anybody giving this guy the benefit of the doubt, he doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. It's not ignorance. He was playing his role in a deliberate stonewalling by the people that are managing this information. And he did it with flying colors, but he didn't get away with it because he created a joke out of himself and this whole effort. And then we have Susan Guff at the Pentagon, who is well-versed in putting the kibosh on anything that comes out like, oh, those weren't UFO materials. Oh, well, here we go. We have Arrow. She's a master at not moving the ball where the Pentagon's concerned. She runs interference with them all the time, and she's really good at it. And people will say, well, Susan does what she's told. Okay, but she's still the one trotting out there and saying nothing to see here. And she's done it over and over and over again.
Well, she's a spokesperson, though, you know, so she's speaking for somebody else. She's not speaking for herself. And
Timmy, it's like if you're doing a job where do you think she just reads a script and says what she's told, and she doesn't go home at night and think about it?
Of course she goes home and thinks about it, but she's
the willing part.
No, she's still her gig is to be a mouthpiece, to speak for those behind her. That's her gig. Now, does she trip on it later? Of course she does. Man, she might watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind every day. I don't know. But what
we're dealing with, all I'm saying is that we're dealing with a cast of characters who have made deception and stonewalling the name of the game, and they go home at night and sleep well and collect their paychecks, and this is what they do. And,
but Ron, that was the problem with Arrow. The problem with Arrow was that the wrong guy, Sean Kirkpatrick, got the gig. Somebody that doesn't consider anything, somebody that doesn't think outside of the box, somebody that literally wrote that paper with Avi Loeb. Hold on. He wrote that paper with Avi Loeb, motherships in the star system, dropping off drones on planets, right? So he goes from that to 2 weeks later and does the UFO hearing. 6 months later, he writes the Arrow report after he leaves. And the Arrow report clearly stated over and over again, we brought in witnesses, they were full of shit. We brought them in, no. The answer is no. Nothing to see here. That clearly is a guy that the head of that office that didn't want to accept or think about or postulate or ponder anything else than no. Because that's it. Not maybe. You're investigating this stuff, you know, so don't sit here and say no. Like, you know, you're judge and jury, and that was a final report. And so
we're giving this guy the benefit of the doubt that he had just all of these little flaws in the way he chose to approach the job. I think the more likely scenario is he was put in that position because he was the guy that agreed to toe the line. and he
Yeah,
took a lot
for
of stuff
sure,
for it.
for sure. Yeah,
He-
yeah.
heat, and his reputation is ruined among most people, and he's disappeared into retired obscurity, probably with a big fat bonus that he earned for doing his duty. But at the end of the day, the denials, like he says, well, I tried to get access to certain things and I was denied. Well, okay, there's nothing to get Sean Kirkpatrick off the hook for being the front man for the next phase of the biggest deception in the history of humanity. And that latest chapter is called Arrow, for sure.
Well, yeah. It was when we look at the stages of everything, when you go back to the UAPTF report number 1 and then report number 2, report number 1 was I thought was, some people said it was nothing burger. I thought it was a pretty awesome burger myself. And you get to, I did. I think it was excellent.
I think we talked about it.
And then the second report, okay. And then the creation of Arrow and the expectations for the community and the world, by the way, everybody was paying attention to this, was that it was going to be taken, Arrow was going to be as serious as the UAPTF was in their first 2 reports. And very well written, the first 2 reports. And Arrow was the exact opposite of that. There were high expectations that were built up, and it turned out to be, it was kind of like Project Blue Book, felt the same base.
Yeah.
that friggin' right, Pat. And it was just kind of weird. You remember, we got to get to your case number 4. In 1997, Roswell case closed. You remember that report from the Senate?
Yeah, crash test dummies that fell through time.
Right. That as bad as that was, the Arrow report was worse. It was it was page after page of I'm going to say it, man. It was page after page of bullshit. Right. So, okay. So let's get to your case. I'm looking at the clock. Case number 4. What is it?
Okay. So case number 4, we're calling it, what are these things? This is another situation where an experiencer who says that she's being communicated with by guiding voices, and I'm not saying voices in her head, but that, she lives her whole life. Like some people say, well, let me ask my guides. She's one of those kind of people. She had these weird little balls show up, and she threw the first ones away. And then she got this feeling like there was something to them and she needed to have them tested. So she went, and these are super tiny, like grain of sand side balls that almost look like the silicone things that you would find in one of those moisture bags, only they're smaller. And when she approached me, my Accidental Truth was playing at the Philip K. Dick Film Festival.
Lean closer to the microphone.
Accidental Truth was playing at the Philip K. Dick Film Festival in New York. After the movie, this lady came up to me and she says, I came here to meet you. I have meta materials. And okay, that's a good way to get my attention. So I went and saw what she had to share, interviewed her, and took a look at some of this stuff. One of the very first people to test these things is the guy that wrote the book on panspermia. And he said that they were in a fairly robust outer shell, and inside was DNA. And then the National Institutes of Health studied them. They tried to burn these things. They won't burn. They tried to figure out what they were. Are they insect eggs? Are they bug eggs? What the hell are they? And then the NSA got a hold of them and got a hold of her. They took the samples away from her and never gave them back, but they shared some of the results with her that these things were emitting some kind of energy source from inside them. And it's just a really bizarre case. Nobody's been able to figure out what these things are. And she says that her guides have told her that these are meteoroids, that these are examples of how life moves from planet to planet, and that they got on Earth not through coming to Earth in a meteorite, which would make them a meteorite, but that they never left being spaceborne before they came to Earth, and they were delivered to some other means and just coming through the atmosphere on a meteorite. But she's convinced that that's what these things are. And so, that's another weird thing. And if you want me to screen share, I can show you a couple pictures of these things.
Yeah, let me see them.
Here we go again. This is Ron James being a sucker for punishment. But yeah,
here we go. We'll have this broken down inside 15 minutes. I'll give it 15 minutes.
No, that's okay. I've got these things pretty handy. It's just going to take me a second.
No. I'm saying it.
Because Jimmy, every time we've ever talked about doing the show, you're like, wow, I want to talk about music and rock and roll. So we should be talking about my new music video.
Nope, not gonna do it. Hey, so how do we? If we know that it's DNA inside of the shell, then whose DNA is it?
It was just it took me a minute to get this out of her. She didn't tell me at first. It was some kind of staphylococcus bacterial. Basically, I have the scientific names of it somewhere, but it was identified. But the question is, what are these shells? Why does it contain a virus? And why won't they burn? So there's a lot of weird questions about this too. And let's see.
What?
Okay, so here are these things. I'm going to screen share. And again, let me preface this with, this is what we were presented with. We are not saying that these are anything except that we're investigating. I had a biologist tell me that they might be insect eggs, which would be that would match a couple things, except for the fact that they seem to be pretty indestructible. And you can see how tiny they are. There's more photographs of these things. You see that? Is that coming up? Yeah. So here's something that she had done under, I'm going to have to adjust the screen share. Bear with me.
No, you had it.
Yeah, well, I showed you that one, but I'm going to show you a couple more. These are some super high resolution images that she had taken of these things by people that do that kind of photography. The one down here in the lower corner is the one they tried to burn. And it retained its shape. It didn't melt. It took on a black hue, but that's all. And so these things are weird. And the guy that studied these actually wrote the book about the transpermia theory. And pull up her PowerPoint. There's a picture that she says came from the NSA that is of these things actually emitting a light from the core, and that here we go. Here's a PowerPoint. I'll just go through it with you. And again, this is a case under investigation. We're not saying anything about conclusions because we haven't come to any yet. We're sharing the results that she says she already got, and we're looking at the story behind these things.
Okay, pull up the screen that you want to see. You're in the PowerPoint now.
Yeah. Okay. So here's more pictures.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay. Let me pop this up. Okay. Now see, here's let me say a couple of things really quick as you go through this. If these are insect eggs, then why would you have staph bacteria?
Well, also, if they are insect eggs, these samples go back to insect eggs are going to degrade and eventually break down. These things have been in her life since I think the 2000s, early 2000s, and they're still around.
Yeah, keep going with these images. Okay, let me see that one right there. The right there, that one.
This one? Okay, so let me
No, down.
Yeah, I know, but this is the description of it. This is what the NSA said. They found an unknown amino acid producing an unknown light source. This is the image that supposedly was provided back to her by the National Security Agency that analyzed these things. And shortly after this exchange happened, they ghosted her. So here's an initial chemical reaction or chemical test. In some of the first tests she did, cesium was a major component of these things. In subsequent tests, no. But this was from, well, actually, I'll say who it was from. The chemistry department at University of Atlanta. About 2 years later, the results appeared yet they actually gave her these results where cesium was a prime ingredient in these shells. And people who know about radiation, cesium it's a type of radiation that is only around in certain circumstances.
Now let me see those.
Yeah,
this is good here. Let me see. I have the ability to blow this up on my screen, and everybody at home, you can't, but I can. That's very interesting.
I invite the internet to go to town on this. It's not going to matter to me if you come back and you can explain this. It's okay with me.
Definitely.
We're looking for the truth, but these things are weird. They are balls of silicon and oxygen, but would appear to be glass. But then somebody else says they're not glass. And this is a sign that says, as you can see, it's not a smooth synthetic glass ball. I have a number of other images I'm working on. We have an enigma, which is difficult to explain rationally. And there's all kinds of little tiny, this shows an organic inclusion. I mean, she spent a ton of money and a ton of time having this stuff analyzed by some very prestigious laboratories. The Penn State Materials Research Institute in January of 2019.
Nice.
And you know, this is some of the stuff that they found in it. These were, I think, electron microscopy. But no two are alike. They're super tiny. When I first saw the pictures, I was like, give me a break. This is those little orange balls that you find in, if you cut open one of those silicone things, they look very much like that. And those are odd shaped and no two are alike, blah, blah, blah. But this is a bunch of them again. What she says that her guides are telling her, is that these are literally transport mechanisms for moving life through space. And,
where did she say she got these from?
She was in England touring crop circles, and they started appearing in the sink of the hotel she was staying at. That's where the first set came. But then over a period of a couple of years, more and more of these things started appearing. Her friend found some on the backseat of his car, and she found some in other locations, and she just started collecting them. This story, it's got some very, very strange elements. This woman is actually exuding. I don't even want to talk about this. It's so bizarre. But she showed me. Crystals are growing out of her feet. Genuine crystals. She harvests them in her sock and she has sent them off to be analyzed. She says that there's something about her interaction with these beings and that these crystals are another way they're using her to bring materials to humanity. It is a weird story. But since I just went down the rabbit hole, I might as well show you some stuff about these crystals.
What?
Yeah. I'm here with you, buddy. Okay.
No. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's keep this going.
All right.
If I'm about to see somebody's feet with crystals growing out of it, I don't know if
that picture, but I went to her house and she showed me her socks that were harvesting these crystals. And here's the PowerPoint about them.
That's too much. It's TMI, man. TMI.
Dude, I freaked out. And you know, it's really funny. I reached out to Gary Nolan and I sent him pictures of these egg things. And he was like, you know what? If the MUFON labs can't find anything about it, send them to me. And then I sent him the PowerPoint about the crystals. And he's like, okay, I'm out. And when she told me that, dude, I was grossed out. I thought it was the most bizarre thing I've ever heard.
That is.
My own two eyes. So these crystals that are literally, they're small. They're about the size of sugar crystals. Some of them, actually about that size. And she showed me she could walk around and they're coming out of her feet. And she pulled off a pair of black socks and they're just full of these things and she could shake them out. And she says they've been studied by all these groups. And here are these things. I saw these with my own two eyes. I have 3 envelopes of these crystals that are coming out of her feet. Look at these.
I shake stuff out of my underwear every day. I can send you that. You want me to send you? I can send you that. You can get that analyzed.
Here's an image of one of the crystals by a scientist at Chromacell in 2014. Milton. Oh, this is the guy, Milton Wainwright. He's the guy that wrote the book about panspermia. Possibly
good book.
Life
Good
being
book.
transferred through meteorites. He's one of the first guys that analyzed these weird little eggs coming out of her. The eggs aren't coming out of her, but the crystals are coming out of her feet, and they're not.
How do you explain that? How do you explain that to your doctor? You go to your podiatrist, man. Check this out. Listen, man.
Okay, so here's what she thinks, and here's what she's been told. Her mother was a subject of an experimental drug when she was conceived. And I can't remember the name of the drug. It might be here in this PowerPoint. But people that were born of people that had this drug being experimented on with it are having these weird things. And also crystals coming out of the body. Because I've looked into this as much as I can because I'm like you. What? Morgellons is crystals
I know.
coming out of the body is a symptom.
Yeah.
Here she's had the National Institutes of Health in October 2018 analyze these things, and here's the elements that they said were in them. There's no doubt that they're being exuded by her body. I saw with my own two eyes, and she's had these things studied to death. And
you cannot, please, Ron, do not say that again. That you saw this, so just don't say
I saw the crystals in her socks, and I saw the little plastic containers full of these crystals that she has. And I'm like, if you're thinking this is a big one. She actually took and went to the store and bought a crystal, the kind of crystal kits that you can grow crystals at, little kids' toys where you can mix some stuff. Yeah. And she put her crystals in them, and they grew in the crystal kit. And that's what she's saying with this. A Toy Smith crystal growing kit. Instead of using the enclosed package of crystals, I put in mine. The image on the left was taken after the water crystal mixture and crystals had dried. I put the container, put it in the closet. 3 months later, I discovered my crystals had grown. The image on the left.
How old is she?
Weird one.
How old is she?
She's in her 70s. And here's the other thing about her. She's famous. She's a famous person. She's an artist that has a big career. She's taught at Harvard. She's not like this crazy bag lady. And that's why she had the resources to go and get all these analysis done. It's one of the weirdest stories I've ever come across. And honestly, if it wasn't for her saying that these little egg things, whatever they are evidence of transpermia, I wouldn't even include her in a UFO investigation. I'd be like, this has
Ron, I need to just so you don't make the mistake. It's panspermia.
Panspermia, yeah.
Yeah,
not
transpermia.
Sorry.
Yeah, transpermia is a band from Germany. They're really good though.
Yeah. So it's Milton Wainwright who's pointed here, I believe, that wrote that book with somebody else, and he was instrumental in analyzing both these crystals and these weird egg things.
Yeah, he co-wrote that with Scott.
Yeah.
And I still think, and when that book first came out, right, in the 70s, early 70s, when that book first came out, it ruffled a few feathers, right? But with all of the meteorites and all of the evidence and all of the amino acids and basic sugars and the things that are surviving the vacuum of space, right? And the basic the components for RNA, and so that book was right. People need to remember that they too easily things get forgotten. We just have amnesia these days. But that panspermia idea is real.
Yeah, and so she says that this is an example of this transport mechanism. And I have 3 sets of samples of this. The MUFON Labs is going to work on them, but we had some problems. with our DNA machine. So the test got delayed. So I'm sitting on three samples with some of these and some of the crystals. And if there's anybody out there that wants to take a shot that is legitimate at analyzing these things, I have an extra set of samples I can share with the right person under the right circumstances. So,
yeah, right on. Well, that, we put up enough images there. I think it's, I think this is going to be, well, she's had all this analysis done, though. You would think that one of those laboratories would have come back and said, this is organic, this is from planet Earth, and this is what it is.
I mean, you think of fish eggs, insect eggs, that somebody would have said, yeah, there's something. But I mean, this lady's used some top shelf laboratories. There's like 5 national laboratories that she's had these analyzed by, including, you know how expensive it is to shoot photographs of things that are the size of a grain of sand at that resolution. She's done a lot of work, and I have no reason to disbelieve her. And honestly, the story is so far-fetched that if she can make that up, she's in the wrong business.
That's okay. That's 4 pretty solid cases. In the time that we
they're only as solid as the internet allows them to be after 24 hours.
Well, I'm not so sure about Charles Black or Chucky Blake or whatever his name is. I'm a little sketchy on that, but and you said it was the Air National Guard. Was it the Air Force or the Air National Guard? Well, here's the other thing. I just remembered this. The 7 planes in 1955 that flew over Crater Lake, they were flying from Redding, California to Washington State. They were flying over Crater Lake when one of those planes disappeared, and that was in 1955. I don't know.
The same time this happened, supposedly.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was. I don't know if they were F-94s. For some reason, I think they were Grumman. They weren't Lockheed. I'm pretty sure. I know my planes, and I'm pretty sure that the F-94 was a Lockheed aircraft. Yeah, Grumman is Grumman, and so I that part I don't know. I would have to go in and look at that. But that was in Oregon, though. That's what is interesting here.
And we've done some more research. I've got a picture here queued up on the screen. I'll show it to you. This is a picture of an F-94 jet, and it accompanies a story that says there's a whole bunch of documented cases of these sightings. And Michael Schratt was able to find for me a lot of articles about the fact that there were these squadrons all over the United States, and they all had standing orders to shoot down any threatening unidentified object, all in this time frame. And here's one from 1952 from
I'll read it. 3 F-94 starfighter tests above Pottstown, Pennsylvania, reported seeing a large pear-shaped and silver object with no visible means of propulsion. Right. Hang on for a second. Just let me hide this for a second. Okay. No, 2 smaller objects also appear to run circles around the larger craft for a period of time. Project Blue Book and remains unsolved. Now, again, one of the most beautiful planes ever built. Now, if you go, this is a simple thing to do, and I like Michael Schratt a lot, but you can do this for yourself. If you go and look at any of the historical books, and you can start with Dolan's National Security State Volume 1. But if you go back to Donald Kehoe, or you go back to the Flying Saucers and all of those books from the 50s that talk about these military cases, one case after another mentions the F-94. It's over and over and over again. F-94 scrambled, F-94 scrambled, F-94, F-94. So yeah, and so this coming up with this particular case with Charles Black or whatever his name is, it's the right aircraft to be naming. Now, to be clear with everybody, I want to make this. I don't want anybody to misspeak here. In World War II, we had rockets on P-51 Mustangs. Okay, we were 100% already firing rockets off of propeller aircraft in World War II.
Right. And when I said that about rockets on jets, I meant rockets on jets. There was only a few jets that they tried rockets on.
Well, I would say that they were trying it with everything. But my point is that the F-94 was the aircraft of choice when needing to get stuff up in the air and chasing these things down. We have got plenty of examples of that in the historical record. So, Ron, where do you see? We've got 1 minute left.
Okay.
Are we there? Are we there? Is the second half of 2024? Are we going to see some action?
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in Washington. The whistleblowers have already had conversations with different people. David Grush's people that he was referring to have been speaking to members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. The cat's out of the bag, but it's like, are they going to show us the craft? I don't know, man. It's because there's this big battle going on, and it's just harder and harder to get any kind of traction because you get one step forward and two steps back. I'll wrap this up with one thing. John Alexander is in Accidental Truth 1. In my opinion, he knows a lot of stuff. He was there for the whole history of this. I went to his house 2 months ago and said, John, I interviewed him at his house, which is a very interesting place. I said, John, you've had some time since Grush came out. The first time I asked you about it, you didn't want to answer, but now you've had some time. And he told me this, and it's on camera. He said, I asked everybody I know about the David Grush story, and they all told me the same thing. And I said, well, John, what's that? And he said, they all said, believe Grush.
There you go. Ron James. Thank you so much, Ron. We'll get the video done. When the video is done, the music video, we'll premiere it here on Fade to Black. All right?
Well, I mean, I have to release the song. Rolling Stone is breaking it, supposedly. And so my publicist has said I'm out of time. It has to drop tonight. So we ran out of moment. Now we could redo, because I wanted you to be on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I envisioned this thing like your logo, where you're all dressed in black with your sunglasses, and you come up over the hill in the desert playing your electric guitar and dropping some lead lines. I'd say maybe we could still do that, because the song doesn't have to be one drop. There could be a lot of versions. But I don't know if you checked out the video. Travis Walton's in it.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing, though, that we have to overcome. I need to get a guitar. That's the thing. I need to get a guitar. Hey, Ron, love you, brother. Keep up the good work. Okay. Thank you so much. The absolute best. Ron James, everybody, breaking it tonight. Four pretty solid cases. Interesting. And that's what I love about not only this community, but this journey that I'm on, that we're all on together, trying to get to it, man, trying to get the answers to all of these questions. And Ron James has been doing it for a very long time. Thank you so much, Ron. This is Fade to Black. It is my Friday. It's not for you. Go back, Lee Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.